Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Be Extraordinary podcast. It is beautiful outside, and I am with my main man and my brother, Taylor Young, today. And man, I tell you what. If you're driving here, I want you to take a second and think about a moment in time where you were comparing yourself to the people in your industry, in your business, maybe your coworkers, maybe a competitor, and how did it make you feel? And did you have an obsession about where you are versus where they are? Have you ever had one of those nights where it just genuinely bothers you that maybe you're not where they are, and you find yourself in this nasty swirl of comparison that can eat you up sometimes? Well, this was a big problem for me, and I know Taylor has shared with me that this was a big problem for him earlier in our career, and candidly, it's just a human behavior. Still struggle with it to some extent. But there was a comment that a mentor shared with us a long time ago that fundamentally changed a lot of that, and as we've progressed down this path, I know for me personally, it's changed my whole perception, which is time exposes you or it promotes you. And what it means is that there are situations that come about where you don't actually know what the situation is, but you compare the results. We consistently think that it's apples to apples and situation to situation, and where someone else is congruent to where we are at that moment in time. And I think it's an ideal I think it's a human condition that we have that allows us to make sure that we're on the right path and see what else is out there and give context to where we are. But it's such a dangerous position because it creates these negative emotions in our lives that don't reinforce the right behaviors. So today I want to share and talk with Taylor about some of these things that maybe we experienced in this journey, we still do, what you can do and what we have done to negate those voices, and also maybe shed some light on some things and some experiences that will help you stay true to your path, stay true to your consistency, stay true to your race, and stay and honor your future self compared maybe to your current self instead of your current self to the people around you, which is not conditioned for success. So Taylor, thanks for joining me today, man. Appreciate it. Love the rip on this subject because I know this one's near and dear to your heart, man.
Dude, it is super near and dear. Good morning. Yeah, man. I mean, you talk about, what it makes me think about is the difference between modeling, which is a productive behavior that successful people do. Meaning, if you come into a new role or a new industry, you want to look ahead at those who have had success and essentially model some or most of their behaviors because it's going to help you get to your goals quicker, right? And so we've heard about that modeling. And so I play around with the balance between modeling and then getting into the comparison game. Mm-hmm. And I think one's in balance and then one's out of balance. And, for me personally, especially early on, but quite frankly, even to this point in our season of business, you mentioned it just being a human condition. You're just naturally inclined to look at the person across the street and say, wow, look at how big they are. Look at how bad they are. Look at how they have it all figured out. Why do I not have these things figured out? Why am I not there yet? And I think you said time either promotes you or exposes you. When you think about it in that framework, over a long period of time, things start to come out. You start to realize that this person that was just dominating, getting all these leads was paying for these leads, right? You start to realize that, they had an unsustainable gift card program that they no longer run and they've sold the agency 5 years. Right? It's just you, but in the moment, you don't have the full picture. But over a long period of time, you're able to allow those things to filter out because you know what your mess looks like, right? Because you see yourself every single day. You see your business every day. You see the problems more than, a lot of times you see the cool things you're doing. You're looking at your mess. And it's the same thing in our personal lives, right? And then you see the person that just posted on social media. And I'm sure that some people perceive even our business or our lives like that because we post on social. And you see that kind of perfect picture and you go, gosh, man, it starts to bring about an emotion that sometimes doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
That's frustrating. It doesn't serve you. So I think when you open that, I think about it being in balance and not being in balance. I think the competitor in me goes, I kind of I like somebody to chase. I like somebody to, that has been where I want to go at this predictable, metric, and I can chase them to say, I want to get there and I'm going to get there because I'm competitive, right? And there, to a certain point, that fires me up. But then at a certain point, it's like this cost to diminishing return. It starts to work against you. It starts to be unhealthy. It starts to be unproductive and unhelpful. So that's a little bit of the dichotomy that I play with. And I'm curious at your thoughts on that.
I mean, I've been there so many times. I mean, I still get there. I mean, I don't know. I think I'd love to find somebody who isn't there. And I think, in contrary to what I used to think, like having any type of perceived success, it doesn't make that go away for me. I continually have the comparison gene, and I have to check myself all the time. And because it's a nasty spiral, and it's just not a good place to be, especially with social media, man. I'm very active on social. I think it's the most powerful marketing tool that you can have, but it is a big threat, of looking at, a window of this perfect life and perfect business to be able to say, well, why isn't mine like that? Or, why is that look so good where I can't get that? And I think that's just number one, I think that's the disease of high achievers. Number one, we all are saying that we're not good enough inside,
and by the way, before social media, this still happened. Right?
Yeah.
This condition existed.
Right. Yeah,
You
exactly.
still looked at the guy driving the really nice car. And you're like, wow, if I could only have that car, without knowing, what his monthly payment is, or that he's upside down in the car.
Exactly. No doubt. But we don't know that. And our brains, sometimes are not conditioned to think logically, and the emotional bug kicks in. And, you have these conversations. I have these conversations all the time. I think the only, hope for me is I think, number one, I think it's a condition. I think that's important to know, is that we all are having the conversations of, man, I don't know if I'm good enough. Mm-hmm. Am I worthy? And then we're all having the conversations of, we think we can do better than the next person, right? We have this superiority complex if we're a competitor. Otherwise, you wouldn't compete. If you didn't think that you can win in whatever arbitrage game that you're creating in your mind, well, then you wouldn't compete. But you believe that you're better because that's just the nature of competition. So it's this weird push-pull, you called it dichotomy, and I agree. And it's like, man, when it's in balance, I feel really good about being able to play the game. When it's out of balance, I don't, it makes me resentful. It makes me bitter. It makes me, I've been in places where I just, I've been depressed. I've been in a funk. I've been in those situations where it's just not good, and I'm down on myself about, man, why am I not where I want to be, or why are we not where other people are? And I feel like we're doing all the right things, and I guess where I've come to a point in our journey in my personal career and my own psychology is that, like, there have been enough situations that have come about and illuminated that, well, the deck was stacked differently.
Right.
And if that happens a couple times, if you have a long enough career, you start to notice that, okay, yeah, they had the car, but they couldn't put gas in it, or, or they were leveraged to the hill, or they had this.
They were doing it unethically.
They were doing it unethically. And there's some people that just don't do it right. Or they had some sort of special incentive program, and there's nothing right or wrong about the way that their path is, but you're comparing your journey. You're assuming that your journey is in lock and step with somebody else's.
It's the same. Yeah.
And they're not. And over a long period of time, that variance becomes less. But in the moment, you just don't have enough context to be able to draw the right conclusions. So where I have landed on that is knowing that over a long period of time, a lot of that stuff kind of evens itself out, and that it'll wash away, maybe the person's that's not doing it the right way, or that's trying to take the shortcut. And, and then, also the second part of that is, man, like, whether or not someone is on the path that you would want to take, let's say someone's not doing something the right way, or let's say they have a special incentive or whatever the case may be, whatever it is that's maybe different than yours, you could still learn from those people, right? So like I went from this whole comparison, trying to compare myself or model, right? But then I'm modeling so much, so literally, that if I'm not where they are, it creates this negative emotion. And then I went the other way that said, all right, well, I'm not going to model them at all because I just found out this, and that. And well, it's apples and oranges. Right. And so I would throw out the modeling completely out the window because I'm like, well, I don't want to model them. I want to find somebody else. And it's like, is that productive? Because you could still model and learn from everybody. Right? Like someone said, like, well, I can learn a lot from great leadership. I think Nick Patty said this, our Jupiter operator agency owner down in Jupiter, Florida. He said, you can learn more from bad leadership than you do from the good leadership. And that's such a perfect, metaphor to say, like, just because there's this balance of like modeling and learning, but not having this negative comparison. But also, even if you find out that it's an apples to orange type of situation, I bet there's a lot of things that help that person get to where they are. And why wouldn't you want to be curious? Why wouldn't you want to pull from that? Why wouldn't you want to diagnose that? Yeah. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And I think sometimes it's the ego gets in the way, and that's that balance for me to like, how do I extract and model, but not compare and spiral?
Yeah, I think you have to have the intention to do so, because I think about that good leadership versus bad leadership. You have to make that decision that I don't agree with 75% of the way this person handles their business, but there may be 25% here. What can I focus on? Sure. And that's a challenge. And I think, I think it's a cool perspective of, I was talking to a scratch agent this morning who's grown a great business, and we're in different situations, right? It's like, I think about my situation. I had two partners. We did it this way. We did it that way. There's so many things that that person has done probably 10 times better than us at that phase in the business that we can learn from if we choose to. Mm-hmm. And there's probably so many things that person could learn from us being on the other side of that timeline or that size or whatever it is, if they choose to learn from. And I get more comfortable in this situation as far as pecking order, or, somebody said the other day really hit with me. It was like, everyone's voice matters, but given the decision or the thing or the context, they're not all weighted the same. Right? Does that make sense? Sure. So if somebody has success in this area, marketing, sales, a certain type of marketing, well, I'd be silly not to weight what they say at a very high level, right, versus somebody that has no experience, but they may have an opinion about something. Right. Okay, I can hear that out and I can put that through my filter, but I'm certainly not going to weight those the same. And so that's what I think about modeling is there's certain people, everyone has their kind of embedded contextual experience and their superpowers, their personalities, that if you choose to, you can borrow something from everyone. But again, over a long period of time, you kind of feel more comfortable with what you have to offer, what you're doing, what you're bringing to the table, to where that doesn't come in as a threat. Yep. Like what they do really well, it's not threatening anything we're doing. It's just more of a curiosity of like, man, that's really cool. I love what you do. Like, tell me how you started this podcast. Tell me about how this journey happened, because it's a vantage point and a glimpse into, if we all had to only learn by experience, this world wouldn't exist. Like that's what primal animals do, right? The ability to tell stories and pass down lessons. That's like what we've done as an elite species of human that these other animals don't do, right? And so it's the same way in business. It's like we don't have to learn every there's no like noble cause that like, hey man, you've learned every hard lesson because you did it yourself. Like no one did it themselves, right? So I think that's a little bit of the balance for me. And then also to speak about comparison, I think the healthy part of comparison is comparing yourself, right? Comparing who you are now, right? Where your business is now, where your goals are now, where your relationships now, where your fitness is now, to where you want to go and next year, your future self, right? And I think that's a very healthy comparison.
But Taylor, that requires me to point at myself instead of looking outside of myself, right? Like that's an interesting predicament, right? Now that one's tough, and it's the right move, but that's the right way to do it. It's just, how do you keep yourself from going down that path in the moment of which maybe you're insecure or you're not really happy with where you are?
Take a long enough time horizon. You know, I think I've been guilty of wanting things too quick, but knowing that we're talking about things, like even if you think about having a good relationship, a good friendship, good fitness. Like, is it your goal to have good fitness for this year and this year alone? No, right? For most people, that's 50 to 60 year thing that they're going to be working on for 50 to 60 years. So why are we in such a rush to get the thing? You know, that's the balance for me, and it's the same with comparison. It's like,
I heard a quote that said, the longer your time horizon, the better decisions that you make. And I love it because it's just, we lack perspective so much on where we are today versus what it's going to look like in a decade, you know? And that's kind of, I don't know how you teach that other than just trust somebody, you know, that's been there before. You know, it's kind of hard to really
experience a little bit of success. I mean, experience a little bit of success, and you'll realize that statement is more true, because you'll realize that on the other side of success, at some point, and success is relative. Like, I used to think in our business, I was like, man, when we get to $1 million in premium, we're going to, like, my life is going to change, man.
Yeah.
Like, everything. And if you're in the insurance industry, you're probably laughing because, and you may feel this way right now. And, you know, we're 50 times that size as the agency now. And I still have the same sort of thoughts about it's not happening fast enough. We're not growing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so clearly it's not that. So if you gave everyone a little bit of dose of success that was like an achiever and just really hungry for something, I think it injects that perspective, because you go, oh, okay, it's not about that.
I still feel
it's
the
not
same
about the thing. I still feel the same way. Right? I got to figure out how I can take a long enough time horizon to enjoy playing the game. And if I'm going to compare myself, let me compare myself to where I was last year. And where am I now? Am I progressing? Am I better? Am I more thoughtful? Whatever you judge yourself on, it may not be just my business is bigger or my business is more profitable. Maybe you're making a bigger impact. Maybe you have more lifestyle and quality of life, and you're able to spend more time with your family. Right. Like, it depends on how you define the game. But if you just look at somebody else's model of success, that they're probably borrowing from somebody because they haven't thoughtfully, you know, sat down and thought about it. They just know that when you get successful, you buy things, and you move into a big house, and then you move in a big car, and then you have a big family, and then your kid's going to, you know, I mean, like, there's just this path in America and around the world that, like, that's a model of success that you haven't even defined for yourself. So of course you're going to be comparing yourself to somebody, and who knows? Do you even like those things?
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, a little bit of a rant.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the perspective that I've lacked has come from not being able to see the game in its full entirety. You know, like, when you've had a little bit longer of a time horizon to look at how things play out and how it works, there's just a level of ease that comes from the emotion's still there. I still feel the same thing that comes up. But I have this sense of ease that says, hey, dude, that's a self-inflicting, you know, thought that's coming through your head. Like, relax, like, it's okay. And I think that's, I mean, for me, I've landed on where I think that's okay. You know, as long as I have an idea of why that's showing up for me, and I can understand that and have context for that, I'm okay with that, because I think it's natural, because we always want to be faster than where we always wanted to move faster than where we are today. But when I look back on situations where I've not been in a good place, I just lack context. So here, let me give you an example. I think one of the things that I think is very important is that if I was going to give anybody advice, would be, I think you can learn from everybody. I think there's modeling to be gained from every situation, but I think you got to be very cautious on who you really take advice from, because I've seen a lot of people that won't share the context. They won't share the why behind the why, behind the why. You know, one of the examples, if you're a young agent in this business, or you're a young agency owner, or hell, you started something new here, and you're in that season of your journey where it's tough and there's limited resources. And one of there was an agent who, one of their ingredients to success was they just said, hey, no, we just spend everything we make, man. We just spend more than everybody else. And I thought to myself, fuck, man, like, how do I, like, we spend a lot too, like we're spending almost everything that we have, we're dumping everything back in. And I'm thinking, how much more can we spend? Well, then to come to find out, there was a, specific incentive where, they were getting an injection of significant capital from the insurance carrier, right? They were getting a significant enhanced commission where they were getting 3 or 4 times the commission for a short amount of time to increase production. So the idea that we were going to be able to model that map was incorrect. So it wasn't bad advice. It was accurate. But would it have been accurate for our business? Would it have been accurate for where we were? There would be no way to be able to duplicate that, right? So I'm thinking, well, there's got to be something wrong with us. There's got to be either something we're not spending enough or we're not spending in the right places. And it drove me nuts for years, man, for years. And the reality was it was a dead end.
It was a different game.
It was a different game.
Yeah.
And it would have been nice for that person to say, hey, yeah, but there's this. But that person didn't want to share it with me. And because the reason they didn't want to share it was because they didn't want to open up to the fact that either they got some help or it was a different game, or the perception was that they weren't as successful as I perceived them to be. And I was like, that was a big aha for me that said, like, everybody, a lot of people want to share their success, but do they want to give you all the underlying stuff that comes from that? And when you don't have all the underlying stuff from that, it can be very challenging, because then you start to compare yourself with something that's not an accurate comparison.
Yeah, but isn't that every comparison that we make? Right?
True.
Like what you just referenced is a perfect example, but I'm just laughing because you do that on a personal level. You look at other people's friendships, their marriages, and they go, oh, they got it all figured out.
Right.
I never see them in a fight. They seem to have it all figured out. Right. You don't have the full picture.
Sure.
And it's the same thing with money, right? Oh, that person, man, they're killing it, man.
Yeah.
Look at all that they have. But you have no idea. Maybe they have more than you think. Maybe they're doing better than you think. Right? Just because somebody has a nice car doesn't mean they're leveraged. Right. Somebody might have a nice car and they got a lot of dough and some really quality asset classes. That's perfect, but you don't have the full picture.
Yeah.
So I think part of that is productive to know that there is stuff to be learned, because I think about that and I know that situation well. There was a lot to be gained from modeling that situation. Mm-hmm. But it just kind of outkicks itself at a certain point if you're trying to exactly duplicate it.
Absolutely.
Right?
That person didn't do anything. It's mine. Yeah. It's my issue.
You brought the feeling on.
I'm trying to, and I think maybe it's just me, but I feel like most people have been here where you're thinking, what is the answer? What is the answer? What's the one thing? What's the deal? And so often than not, we look at, somebody who perceptually has what we want, and instead of modeling behaviors and attributes and things that we could pick up on skill sets, we're looking for the answer. Mm-hmm. We're looking for the thing. And it's like
the mechanism.
Isn't that a mistake? It's such a mistake. It's such a misguided, you're asking the wrong question, right? And I found myself asking the wrong question. And because I asked the wrong question, I got an answer, or I got the wrong answer. And so again, it's nothing on the other person's end, it's harmless. But for me, because it wasn't a trained psychology, because it lacked experience, because it lacked a perspective of long-term thinking and accurate thinking, you get wrapped up into this, what's wrong with me? I'm not good enough. We must be not doing well. Why aren't we farther along? And it's like, dude, those are really damaging thoughts as an entrepreneur. Those are really damaging thoughts as an achiever, because they reinforce the wrong thinking. They reinforce the wrong emotions, and it's a tough place to be. And I would just go out to say, I'm sure whoever's listening to this, and I would believe that you've been there before. And I've and I go through seasons of it all the time where it's it's good and it's bad, and But having the perspective from situations that have occurred has been so helpful for me on my journey, because it just those are toxic times.
So you just said something that triggered a thought, and you said this the other day. Is what's our biggest threats as an achiever in a role in an entrepreneurial, business owner hat, right? We perceive the biggest threat as failure, right? There's many roads you can go down, but I think we've all agreed upon the biggest threat is not staying in the game. The biggest threat's quitting, right? I think if you look at a long enough time horizon, pick a number, call it 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, call it a lifetime. Yep. Your opportunity for success, as you define it, over a longer period of time is borderline almost inevitable as long as you can stay in the game and you're improving year over year, right? All the emotions that you just experienced, that I experienced, and hopefully people that are listening to this, I'm sure you've experienced the comparison and how it makes you feel. Mm-hmm. Those often lead to us getting out of the game, right? Because you talk about maybe there's something wrong with me, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe it's the wrong industry, whatever it is. Whatever you're telling yourself is going to prevent you from seeing the other side of this thing. And the other side of it, that's where all the fruit is, right? That's where a lot of the fruit is. And when I say the other side of it, again, it's just, but if you looked over 50 years, 20 years, 30 years, and you said, okay, here's where I am. Let me take inventory. Let me play the game. Let me develop because I like the game. I want to progress. Mm-hmm. I just need to get a little bit better this year. And if I get a little bit better, my business is going to be a little bit bigger, whatever as you define it. Okay, and then next year, let me do the same thing. And so while I'm stacking skills, I'm looking at this, and you look up, and it's been 10, 15, 20 years. So that's something I think about is the biggest threat for you is quitting.
So I think it was Eric Atzma he did put a text last night in our leadership group, and it was talking about finish lines. And immediately, I responded back. He had a tough day yesterday. Dude was in it, and it's like I'm thinking about all the finish lines that I've arbitragely put.
I mentioned it earlier in this podcast.
Right. So there's your finish line, right? But like, it's so funny how obviously right when you hit that, you create another arbitrage finish line, another arbitrage finish line, another arbitrage finish line, and yet you still have these emotions that continue to show up, and so. It's funny how that works. You talk about, what that success is for you. It's like, number one, you got to define it, but also, is it the achievement of that thing? Because you're going to achieve stuff all the time, and we just move the goalposts. So it's like, instead of it being a finish line, what if we looked at it as a
checkpoint?
A checkpoint.
Yeah.
It's like this is an ongoing continuum, but yet these checkpoints are fun places to celebrate.
No doubt.
And so, unless you're going to be the number one and you can compare yourself to everybody in the industry and you're going to be number one in all the categories at all times, you're just completely setting yourself up for psychological misery. And this game is supposed to be fun. This game is meant to let it rip. This game is meant to loosen up and improve your life and improve the lives around you. And like, how are you expected to do that if you're living in this container of comparison to where the next finish line is this arbitrage setup that you've stolen from other people around you because they're there? It's just a really bad place to be.
Yeah, no, it is. And that just, the checkpoint, when you think about it, if you've ever played a video game, it's awesome. You get a little feedback,
get more time,
a little dopamine hit, and then you get through the checkpoint, or you play Monopoly, you get $200 because you passed go again, right? You avoided the threats of going out of the game one more time around the board, so you just get a little bit of encouragement. You put a little money in your pocket, and you go around the board again, and you may land on property, and then you buy a bigger property, right? And then you progress as the game progresses, and there's a reason for that. So I kind of view this like that, where our goal is to enjoy playing the game and get better each time that we go around the board. But most importantly, the goal of the game is to keep going around the board. Yeah. Because if you don't go around the board, you lose.
Well, and
that's, you stop.
And why do you lose if you stop? Because you should have been having fun playing the game the whole time.
Yeah.
We talked about it this year at our summit, and Simon Sinek has kind of rebirthed this concept with one of his books that he came out a couple years ago, which is, the infinite game versus the finite game. And what we're talking about is creating this container of finite rules and, you know, a arbitrage finish line. But in that container creates all this negative emotion that is not good for someone's journey, right? Like, it's just because then it's just like, hey, we got to get to this, and that's all that matters. Yeah. And you lose the juice of this experience of why you started out in this in the first place. But if you're playing an infinite game, with what you said, which is just to continue playing the game
and get better,
then the answer would be the reason I want to continue to play the game is because I'm having a blast doing it.
Yeah.
I'm having fun.
Well, that's why I say if everyone can get a little dose of success, because you quickly realize that all this pain and sacrifice to get to a destination and then not feel the way you thought it would feel,
right,
will reinforce that infinite mindset quicker, because you can understand that. I used to look at people that had success and be like, man, come on. You're going to tell me it's not about money? It's about money for me right now, right? Like, I'm broke. Like, you're going to tell me it's not about money? It's insulting, right? Like, look at how easy you have it. Right? But then you do realize that you go, oh, they've been to that side. They've gotten a little money, and they realize that it's not about money. I can learn that from them.
Right.
Perfect. So,
and maybe the answer is in your journey, you got to make it not about money before you can appreciate it not being about money. And that's okay.
It's part of the journey.
That's okay. But maybe you can borrow from somebody that's been there and say, at least have enough curiosity to say, I don't know if I believe that yet because I can't really get my head around that. But I'm going to go ahead and bank that one in my subconscious because it will serve you later on, you know, if you allow it to. Because, man, the worst thing in this game for me is to become quote unquote successful and be miserable.
Yeah.
That to me is the ultimate failure. Like, why would to put in all this effort and all these resources and invest all this time and money and energy to get to a arbitrage point and be unfulfilled? What a shame that would be.
Yeah.
You know, like,
well, and by the way, what you just did is kind of my parting point. You're starting to define success for you. And what you've started to do is define success at not where you reach, but how you feel and what you experience along the way. Mm-hmm. And I think my parting thought would spend time modeling people and looking over the fence and seeing what other people have and what, more importantly, what you can learn from them towards the acquisition. But just make sure you spend a disproportionate amount of time on what you want to experience, what you want to accomplish, and allow that filter to start serving you. And then what's ironic is that once you get a feel for what you define as success, man, you're going to be fired up to go after it for sure.
Well, we'll close there, man. That's awesome. I feel like it's a very vulnerable, cool conversation, man. So thanks for sharing that. Well, I think we're in the season of, you know, goal setting and creating momentum for the year and all the stuff where you kind of take inventory. My challenge to leave here today is, if you're listening to this, is you've done incredible things with your life. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I forget all the different things that I've done and we've done along the journey. I forget about it. I have amnesia. It's like I get to one point and then I forget all this cool stuff.
Deletion machines, man. We're deletion machines.
And these thoughts come in. So what has helped me is to really take inventory and be like, hey man, like, what are the cool things that you've accomplished? If you're listening to this, you're not listening to this for just because it's entertainment. You're listening to this because you're looking to improve your life, which means you've done things, you've accomplished things, you've pushed the ball down the field. And so take inventory of what those things are. Like, take inventory of all the cool stuff that you've done. And imagine what that happens, what that feels like. You feel gratitude, you feel excitement, you feel self-confidence. You almost think to yourself, man, I wish I could go back and experience that again. It starts to revigorate this excitement of what this journey is about. And so much of this process of becoming and goal setting and pushing is about reaching for what's not here yet. But there is some power in looking back at what you've accomplished and feeling good about it, right, and feeling excited about it, and taking gratitude and taking time to feel grateful for it. Because if we can get that feeling and we can operate from that feeling, this game just is so much more fun.
Yeah.
So much more fun.
Our coach asked something, and at first when he said it, I'm going back to the cynical, like, what are you talking about? And it was just a simple question, like, what if everything you wanted, all the resources that you thought you need, what if they existed right in front of you?
Yeah.
What if you were good enough already, right? And the process of asking those questions, of remembering all the cool things that you've done and all the mountains that you've climbed, brings to light all that is available right in front of us because we're choosing to find it. Yeah. And we're choosing to look for it. It's not make-believe. It exists. I mean, how many times you just mentioned, even in an inventory of 6 to 12 months, I could name 12 things that you've done that are incredible success stories. You probably would name 2 of them if you're lucky, right? And we're all guilty of that if we're not paying attention to it. So just like we're talking about comparison, look back and reflect. I love the way you said that and how that could create momentum from a grateful state rather than a state of lack, rather a state of focusing on things that you don't have, the things that other people have that you want that you don't have, right? And that's a contract that you have to say, I'm going to be miserable until I get those things.
Oh, man,
right?
God. Well, say that again. That's a contract that states you'll be miserable until you have the things. Oof, that's powerful. Well, man, that's, damn, I'm going to think about that. We have to put that one up on social media. So, well, hey, if you know somebody, care about them and love them, send them this podcast, man. We all are challenged with the same things, but this is why this community exists.